Following interviews and commentaries are for entertainment only. The views and opinions expressed therein are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Sheranian Communications, KHQN, or Utah Valley Live.
Welcome to It's Not Your Fault, hosted by Steve Shenk and hosted by me, Kim Power-Stilson. We're here to talk about Steve Shenk's book, It's Not Your Fault. And every week we have a topic that, listeners maybe have requested that helps us go one step further in understanding why we're here and perhaps getting a little help from the guardian. Now, as you know, the book is based on the scenario of Michael, who is every man, and then the guardian appears when he is ready to learn something. And as you go through the book, and as you see as you watch this show, every week we learn a little bit more about ourselves and how we adapt better and live more fully in society. So today we're going to be talking, of course, with Steve Shenk, the author, about gratitude and solutions with gratitude.
I'm grateful for this opportunity to talk about gratitude. No, people live in quiet desperation many times about the trauma that they have in their lives that they've dealt with. It seems like most of us are like the juggler in the circus that has the sticks with the plates on them. He gets a plate up on top and he spins that bugger, and then he goes to the next one and spins Dumbo. That. And by the time he gets to the third one, the first one is kind of wobbling a little bit. He goes back and gives that a lick, Our job plate, starts to wobble a little bit, so we give that a lick, and then our honey and sweetheart plate wobbles and says, "How come you're not home more often?" And we have to give that a lick.
Where are the roses?
Yeah, then the teenager plate, or plates, or cauldrons, whatever teenagers do to you. But anyway, you're spinning those, and so you get down to the end of the line of something else. We seem to run through our lives like that, and like I say, a lot of people live in quiet desperation, fearing what's going to come next. There's an interesting principle that we're putting together with the concept of working with goals. You remember on one of our previous shows, we told everybody to sit down and write all the goals, everything that they wanted to accomplish.
Did you?
Yeah. And Kim and I were talking in this last weekend, and we decided to start smoking our own dope a little bit more and start doing some of the things that we are talking about on the show even more than we have been. And
I did it.
You did. Very good.
In review, right? You asked us to write down everything we're grateful for.
Okay.
And so I bought each of my children a notebook, Walmart, 50 cents. Passed it out on our family night and asked every one of them to write everything they were grateful for. And then Sunday night, a week later, I had them sit down and write. So we did that first, and then I had them sit down and write the things that were bothering them. The things that you said bothered your heart or that you were worried about. And I had them write down all the things that were bothering them, and underneath that, I had them write the solution to that, as you suggested.
And that becomes a goal, but here's the principle that people, most of them that I talk to, have never heard before. When you're troubled over something, the most valuable thing that you can do is stop and think of the things around that subject matter that you're grateful for. For example, if you're dealing with lack, you don't have enough money, you don't have what you need to accomplish what you desire to in life. It can be fearsome. It can be worrisome. People stay awake at night wondering about that. And so one of the ways to deal with that fear or that anxiety is to take that issue and list or be aware of all of the things around that you're grateful for. My sweetheart had her father had open heart surgery a couple weeks ago now. And she was really troubled over the reaction. He's 86 years old, and it's really rough on a person that age to deal with stuff like that. And she was worrying, and she was troubled. And you find that anything that you worry about, you probably are worrying because you don't either know the solution or you can't do anything about it. She couldn't do anything about what her father was going through. She couldn't fix him. And so she'd spend a lot of time being awake at night, just troubling over, what to do. Well, the way that you handle that is, first of all, she's grateful for her father. She's grateful for the fact that she has good health to be able to go and nurture and be supportive to him. And if you write down the things about that you're grateful for, and then you establish, what can you do anything about? Can you do anything for him? No, you can't. But you can be grateful for the fact that you can receive the inspiration or the guidance to know exactly what you can do when you have an opportunity to be helpful or useful. And once you have a plan, and that you're grateful for the fact that you have the health to go and sit by his bedside and hold his hand and talk to him when he's a little bit loopy from the drugs or whatever, that you will know and set the goal, I know exactly what to do to help my father at any given time when I'm there, what I can do. You can't set a goal for anybody else, but you can set your goal to take care of yourself and what you're able to do for them. I will know exactly what to do to comfort him, to help him. And then if I'm grateful for him and all he's been to me, then the fear disappears. Try and think of gratitude and lack at the same time. A lot of people out there are really hurting right now economically, don't have enough money. I am grateful for the fact that all of the things that connect with money that people are grateful for, I have this clothing right now. I have clothing. I'm grateful for the fact that I don't have to buy clothing because the clothing that I've got right now will wear for a good long time until I get some money. So I don't have to worry about clothing. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that I have something to eat, even though we don't have other things. Whatever you're grateful for. You cannot think gratitude and lack at the same time. You can't think gratitude and fear at the same time. You can't think gratitude and anger at the same time. If you have somebody at work that's just causing you all sorts of hassle, you might have a snotty, mean, nasty, ornery, no good, lousy, rotten boss like me. You never know what you're gonna what the deck of cards is dealt, what kind of a hand you're gonna be dealt. But you can't do anything about that snotty, no good, rotten boss. But you can know that you're grateful to have a job. You're grateful for the understanding that you have of who maybe kicked his cat that caused him to be dirty, rotten, no good stinker. Okay? And maybe if you learn some of the other principles that we talk about, like the one, to know me is to love me, if you somehow get next to him and find out what he fears, what he's worried about, what he's concerned about, what he likes, what he loves, what he cherishes, what's important to him, all of a sudden, to know me is to love me is another principle. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to know that no good stinker of a boss and discover that he has feelings, he has wants, needs, hopes, wishes, dreams, all of this, and to know who he is and to become able to love even that person that seemed to be a stinker. So gratitude solves a lot of problems. If you're afraid, what are you grateful for? And then set the objective that the problem that you're afraid of will be resolved favorably on your part. And we'll be talking about in a later program about setting goals and dealing with the goals and things. But this is the gratitude section. This is a solution to so many issues that people have. If you're worried, if you're nervous, I'm grateful for the gifts and the talents that I have. I am grateful for the experience that I've had dealing with no good, rotten, stinking bosses or whatever. I'm grateful for the fact that I have a companion that likes themselves best when they're with me. I'm grateful for understanding some of these principles that say, if I can say in your presence, when you're around me, I, Steve Shenk, like me best when I'm around him, okay? When I'm around you. So those things that we're grateful for can solve all of the fears, anxieties, and doubts that we have.
And Steve, I want to throw in that it does work. Like I said, I tried it on my kids, and I've arranged from going off to college, high school, to now junior high. Oh, so hard for me. Anyway, I had them all write down these as you instructed. They watch your show, and so we did that as a family. And my son had things on his list from, that he appreciates his bed and his dog and his toes. And
his toes?
His toes. He had listed his toes. He's a skateboarder, and so at the very end,
good toes.
Yes, he said and his worry was that he didn't have new grip tape, which is very important to a skateboarder.
Okay.
I don't know. You moms may know. So he didn't have grip tape, and so he wrote, as you instructed, that I have really good grip tape. And we were walking through the mall the other day, and he said, "Oh, Mom, they have grip tape here." And remember, I did my chores, and so I went in, bought the grip tape, and afterwards he said, "It does work. The gratitude journal does work. I have really good grip tape." He's like, I walked around all week being thankful for my toes, and look what it got me. Every time I told him, like you said, every time he went negative, every time he would think, "Oh, I need new grip tape or something," he thought of the things he was grateful for, and he would run through that list. And like I said, one of the things he always kept saying is, "I'm thankful for my toes," because you can't have gratitude or anger or fear and gratitude. So it really works, and I tried this in my family, and we have to go to break now, but while we're on break, just think about getting a notebook for your kids and trying what Steve Shenk is suggesting. And when you can get the book, It's Not Your Fault, you want to get that book too, because it's full of great ideas. But this one and this show is superb. So, okay, we'll be right back with more after this.
Folks, have you ever realized that freedom is spelled F-O-O-D? Food. After air and water, food is our greatest dependency. Taking control of that dependency ensures personal power, independence, and freedom. We can't control earthquakes, storms, martial law, dollar crash inflation, the global warming hoax, farm and garden restrictive legislation, job loss, crop failures, or the 2012 planet disruptions. However, if we have our own food, none of these can control us. Hunger can never be used to control you if you never are forced to stand in a bread line because you do not have your own bread. It seems the only freedom we still have control of is possession of food. If we don't control our own food, events are rapidly moving to use food to control us. Freedom truly is spelled F-O-O-D. Contact efoodsdirect.com or call 800-409-5633. That's efoodsdirect.com or 800-409-5633.
Welcome back to It's Not Your Fault, of course, hosted by author Steve Shenk and myself, Kim Power-Stilson. We are thankful for our many watchers and viewers and listeners on everything from KHQN 1480 AM to Ustream to the Roku box and Facebook, etc. So thanks for joining us, and please share us with your friends. Before the break, we were talking about the idea of gratitude.
If you take all the fears, all the worries and frustrations and stresses that we have, there's a place where you can go. It's your quiet place. It's a place where you can be at peace and comfortable. And it comes from using the one principle that we're talking about, this thing called gratitude. If you take those stresses and those anxieties and the things that you're worried about and that you're frightened of, and figure out all the things connected around them that you're grateful for, then you can't feel anger and fear and frustration at the same time you feel gratitude for those things.
It's so true.
Now, when we get done with the gratitude lessons, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the goal section or the objective section, and we're going to write a goal of having already accomplished whatever it was that you were concerned about. And if you have a plan, now one of the examples that we use that is absolutely very uncomfortable for me to talk about and for most people to listen to, but it's very real. If you have a plan, no matter how dire the situation is, you no longer fear it. The only thing that people fear, oddly enough, the only thing that they fear and they stress over is the unknown. If you take somebody on death row, and you've heard this example before, I hate it, but it's so extreme. When they run out of appeals, and it's finally, guy, it's going to happen, there ain't no other alternatives. Oddly enough, in many cases, in the majority of cases, they have peace because it's not an unknown. As terrible and discouraging as it must be to think that you're going to die, the fact is that it's peaceful. So what we're doing is we're going to be using goals and objectives and teach people how to accomplish anything that they choose to in their life, because we are creators. If you think it, it's created. It's just a matter of letting it come forth from the universe that gives you everything.
And it works so rapidly. I mean, you promised that on last show, and I know viewers and listeners had lots of comments on that. You can go back and watch them on Roku Box at home on your TV or on Ustream. So you can just go to Facebook and find those old shows. But, moms out there and parents, there's a lot of issues going on. And you mentioned the last show, that you could apply this to your children.
Right.
And so I did. I have a child going into college and leaving the nest, and she was very concerned about a lot of things having to do with, how we're going to pay for college and job, all those things. And that stress trickles back on parents because you want them to have everything. And so I sat her down, and I can't, it's unknown, right? Like you said, I couldn't fix everything. And she was particularly worried about these roommates who seemed different than she was. And 6 girls in an apartment is not a recipe for happiness anyway. But, when that's what it is, right? I'd love to put her in her own room, but I think it's great that she's in this apartment. Anyway, I asked her to focus on the gratitude journal, and she gave me such grief. And parents, you know how the kickback you get from kids.
Yeah.
And by the way, my husband is the only person in my family who hasn't done it yet. All my kids have.
Yeah, but he carries a gun.
Yeah, so anyway, you better do it. Anyway, so I had her do the gratitude journal and write down the worries that she said, and she started thinking positively, and she would always start to complain. I'd say gratitude, and she'd go to gratitude, and she'd be like, I'm grateful for bananas, or anything she could think of to be grateful for. And she actually went into a situation just yesterday where she went in to meet these roommates that she was worried about, and she ended up loving them, just like she had written in her gratitude journal. And it was that simple for her. Now just think about the biology tests that are coming up, or people she'll be dating. Those things can be solved by Steve's very simple suggestion, which was just write everything you're grateful for. Every time you go to a worry, think to gratitude, and then write down your problems as if they are solved. And I know you're going to dig more into that, but this is worth listening to. And really, parents, this is something that has changed my life. In the last couple of weeks since I've been watching this show and hosting with you, I'm here next to you.
Yeah.
It's kind of an advantage. I've applied every principle that you've suggested, and filtered it through my family. And Steve, I want to thank you because it really has made my life less stressful. It seemed like a lot of work to do, but my life is less stressful.
Well, and you see, that's just the gratitude journal.
We're just starting.
Yeah. And that's what you use to fall back on as soon as you start to feel fearful or stressed or anxious or concerned or whatever. And that will resolve those feelings because you can't feel them both at the same time. But then
why is that? Physiologically, just is not possible.
Okay, the human being, even though we think we're multitaskers, can only handle one thought at a time. In this case, one feeling at a time. And now we think we're multitaskers because we can have a feeling here and a feeling there real quickly, but you can't do them at the same time. So if you think lack and gratitude for all you have, try and do that. Try and think arrogance and gratitude at the same time. I'm very more important than you are, but I'm grateful for all I have. It doesn't work. You just can't do it. You can't think a negative or a depressed. You got to understand that the greatest illness among American women is depression. It's a psychological illness. How are they? You look at the TV. I mean, it's men and their equipment and women and their depression. That's what you see drugs for all the time. Well, how does gratitude work? Try and think depressed. Oh, I'm so miserable, but I'm grateful at the same time. It doesn't work. So by that conflict, what you can do now when we get into the goals, which is going to be another program, when you set your objectives, I have all the money I need for my tuition, like your daughter. I have the personality and the means by which I draw people to me, and my roommates love me.
Which is what you wrote.
That's the goal. And then she walks in. The first roommate is a redhead, and she's this snotty little queen of Bumperville, Florida, or something like that. And all of a sudden, you get depressed. Oh, this roommate doesn't love me. I'm grateful for the fact that I have. And then you state your goal again. I'm grateful for the fact that all of my roommates love me. You see?
It's that simple.
I am so lovable that people can't not love me. That's a double negative, but it works. So,
I mean, and you say this, and probably people are watching saying, okay, but I think doesn't it come down to discipline? I mean, you have to train your mind to go back to that gratitude, because you could just wallow. Sometimes, I'm just going to wallow.
Well, sometimes it feels good. It feels good to lay there and feel sorry for yourself and be miserable. Everybody hates me. Nobody likes me. I think I'll eat a worm. Big, fat, juicy ones, little bitty,
I've
skinny
never
ones,
been that bad.
And at a certain point, if you remember the principle, then you just grab anything connected with what you're worried about and be grateful for it. And then you think gratitude, gratitude, gratitude until you start to feel back to who you are. Another thing that works, you remember the mirror technique that we talked about. Folks, if you didn't hear that particular program, you can take someone who is crying hysterically and grab them by the shoulders and put them in front of a mirror so they have to look at themselves. They can't do it. There's some things that we can't allow ourselves as human beings to do. If somebody is embarrassed in front of you, they won't make eye contact. They can't expose themselves to being looked at by someone before whom they're embarrassed. We have certain rules that are just incontrovertible with regard to how we feel about our identity and who we are. And the thing with gratitude, it's such a pure, true principle. We're so hardwired to not be able to be grateful. You see, if you look in the scriptures, what is the greatest sin that God the Father sees in his children? It's ingratitude. If you're not grateful. And so when you have teenagers that never say thank you, when you have teenagers that you're dealing with when you have teenagers that you're dealing with that have a hard time with being appreciative and things like that, it's a real problem. Because if they would learn gratitude, oftentimes they would have the friends that they cry for, and that's why they're not thankful. They resent life, they resent everything about them because they can't do the two at the same time. So if they could learn to use the principle of gratitude, if each one of us can say about ourselves, we have the gifts and abilities that we need to draw to us the friends, the circumstances, the wealth, the prosperity, the abundance, the various things that we need, and we're grateful for that, it can't help but happen. Plato and Emerson, made the statement, that for which you are grateful cannot be denied. Now, that's not scripture. That's Plato. That's an old dude way back that also wrote about teenagers, by the way. We'll tell you about that sometime. And Emerson, a great writer of more recent times, but that for which you are grateful cannot be denied. So we're going to use that gratitude to get rid of fear, anxiety, frustration, stress, and all that nasty stuff. And then we're going to roll it right over and be grateful for the accomplishment of the objectives and goals that we set when we have a goal setting session. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And this is It's Not Your Fault by author Steve Shenk. We're your hosts, Steve Shenk, Kim Power Stilson, and you can find us on Facebook. Go ahead and like the show. It's Not Your Fault. You can watch it live on the Roku box every week, on Ustream, and as well on Facebook. Now, Steve, we only have a few seconds left, but you'll have a conference coming up soon where people will be able to actually come real time and learn from you, which will be really fun. We can get a copy of your book, and every week you can find tidbits of wisdom on the site from Steve Shenk, too.
Tidbits. Like my daddy used to say, even a blind hog can root up an acorn once in a while.
Anything like that will help with your teenagers, I promise. Steve's the go-to guy for help because I'm the success story. My kids are loving me right now. Thanks, Steve.
That's cool.
Again, it's Not Your Fault, and tune in next week for the next show.
Absolutely.